G'day, listeners. This episode is proudly brought to you by our sponsors, supshq.com.au. Use BWB15 at checkout to receive 15% off and direct shipping. G'day, listeners, and welcome back to another epic episode of your favorite shit-talking, banter-educated podcast, Bros of Brains, joined by my usual co-host, who is apparently better than all of us on the other side of the world, lapping it up with oil tycoons and whatnot.
I'm actually on the casting couch, just the hum.
Actually, it looks like you've probably made a few threats to America, and you've just been locked up in this tiny little room, and they're like, "Yeah,
legit,
one video."
I'm actually not meant to be in here, but they allowed me one phone call. and you know, this day and age, the phone call can be via Zoom, so we're good.
Yeah, but yes, we are in Dubai.
Yes, we are.
That was a trip.
Yeah, good. Our flight was actually.
Did you get luckily upgraded again?
I told you I was doing premium economy. I wanted to test it and see what it was like compared to business, because obviously it's much cheaper than business, but you pretty much get the same perks. It's just a little bit different in terms of seating arrangements and stuff like that. But you get free drinks, free alcohol, meals included, monitor.
Yeah, right.
It's pretty sick. The only difference is it's not single cabin, so it's like business and first class. You get your own little pod. Whereas this one, it's 2 4 2.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like the seats are bigger, you get more leg room, you can sleep. So I'm like, thought I'd try it.
If you want to run out on the flight, you got to...
Well, I mean, just blanket and, turn the hip a little bit. And, if I'm next to someone, well, hey, what's going on? But so it was actually all right. The flight was fine because what was it, 9 o'clock flight at night. So stayed awake for the first sort of 5-6 hours because the time difference. So it's 5-6 hours back. So it's only 20 past 10 in the morning here. So we're
oh right.
True.
So
I was just literally So I was just staying awake watching a couple of movies. Ended up watching, what did I watch? I watched John Wick 4 again because it was on there. So I thought solid watch. And then the Guy Ritchie movie, I can never remember the name of, with Jason Statham in it. So I watched that again because I was I'd seen that at the cinemas, and I'm like, well, I've been wanting to watch that one again. So I watched that, and it was well, 2 movies down, a meal down. I'm like, I'll have a glass of red wine and go to sleep. So I managed to get 5 hours sleep. Honestly, 5 hours sleep, wake up, put on another movie. I started watching A Few Good Men. That was the last movie before we landed. I'm trying to think what was the movie before that. I don't know. Can't remember. I watched something that I wanted to watch. So I was like, yeah, sweet. This works.
Easy done.
Yeah, it was a fucking easy flight. It was probably easier than the business flight that I took last time I came. So I was like, this is great.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And honestly, for anyone, Melbourne Airport, international airport, getting out, a pain in the ass. Not so much the timing, it's just the process. You got to go out, you go through customs and all that sort of stuff. You grab your bag and then you got to exit with your card that you give them when you're done. Yeah. Here, man, dude, off the plane, bags are ready, including my golf bag, the oversized luggage. It's right next to that. They have an oversized luggage trolley, or what do you call them? The things that the bags go on? Carousel. So they have an oversized carousel for each single carousel for all the flights that come off. Not just one section.
Oh, wow.
Everyone, they've got them for every single one. It's
probably suck.
Yeah, so it's I go to my carousel, my bag's already there. So my golf bags come off and my actual bags already come off. Literally bags. And then walking out for customs, if you want to declare, it's hilarious walking out of Dubai airport because it's it's declare it. If you want to declare one side, and if you don't want to declare anything, walk through the other side. Where you want to declare, it's closed. It's always closed. They don't care. You just walk. That's great. Nice. Just walk straight out to the cab, and I'm yeah. Got to the airport. I got to the hotel so landed at 5:15. Got out of the airport by 10 to 6 or 5:45. I was out fast, and then it was so far. It was so fucking good because there was no one there to come out of customs. There was no one here.
Yeah.
because it's quiet time, and then literally got to the hotel, checked in, got an early check-in, which was sick. Yeah, so I checked in at like 6:30 in the morning. Went up, had a shower, and because on the last day that I leave, I'm not going to be able to have breakfast because breakfast starts at 7, and I'll have to leave probably at 7 or just before because I have an early flight.
Yeah,
they're like, okay, well, we'll move your first breakfast to today, so we'll move the last breakfast to the first morning because I've already paid for it.
Done.
And I'm like, sweet. So I went and had breakfast. Oh, it was great.
Nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
I'm cooked now. But anyway. It's hot.
Hey,
it's
that's
like
not
35
bad.
degrees. So it's like 34, 35 degrees already. 36 maybe. That's hot. Yesterday was 42.
We got trash weather, just fucking overcast and
it's friggin', it was hot.
that's good though.
So
Fucking not bad. I'm getting, well, I guess it gets me a bit more excited for our first international flight.
Yeah.
Never done. Well, I've been to Bali in Thailand, so I've been like 6-hour flight tops.
Yeah. Well, the US, going into the US and then out at customs, it's depending on where you are, it's not too bad. But I mean, depends how busy the flight is too. Like I had a packed flight, but everyone had connections. Everyone was going to like Europe.
Yeah, can you pause real quick? I think Brooklyn just dropped something on herself.
But anyway,
yeah, so we'll be
killing yourself.
we'll be I think we're landing in Washington. It's they call it IAU, International something. I don't know. I can't remember off the top of my head. But yeah, it's strange. It's strange the way like the interconnection of America. It's easier to get off at Washington at the main airport there internationally and drive to Virginia where we're staying versus get any international flight in Virginia and drive to where we're staying. Like the metropolitan area of Washington overlaps into Virginia. And so it somehow makes more sense interstate to travel from there to there than land in the state and drive to where we're going. So, okay.
Yeah. I mean, look, we live in Australia. We're fucked either way. So same.
Yeah, legit. I was talking to someone. Yeah, I was talking to someone who's like the equivalent of a major city for us that you would fly to is 1,200 kilometers away, which is what, about like 800 miles.
Yeah.
These guys literally have like 5 major cities with like 2 million people at each one in between that distance. And we're just like, we'll do one each. That's good enough.
Yeah,
that's
it was funny. Like I was because as I got on the flight, obviously people's screens are up and around. And it's like I'd knocked off my first movie. Because it's like I'd got up, got in the plane, gone up, sort of leveled out, then put my headphones on and started watching a movie. So it would have been like half an hour, 40 minutes into the flight before I started watching a movie, right? I watched that movie and my second movie and looked at someone had the flight map out. We'd literally just passed WA. We've been flying for 4 hours, but on the map you could still see WA. Like, you know, we've just gone over the border of WA. Like that's how cooked like it is to get out and go like to another country from Australia. Like 4-hour flight and you've only just gone over WA. Like far out.
You do that in Europe, bro. You're clocking like 10 different
you're going end to end.
Yeah, legit. You could follow the invasion of Normandy and be like, okay, the Allies landed here. I'm going to do a 4-hour flight, and I'm now in Berlin. Like, bro, what?
Seriously, dude. Even here, if I fly for 4 hours, like I'm in Turkey.
Yeah, you go 5 hours in Dubai. You're well and truly. You can get a fucking Asia Minor, or you're fucking well and truly in the Middle East.
I'm laughing where I could go here. Like I even believe me, I check it because I look at the flights and I'm like, man, well, $150 return to go to Turkey from fucking Dubai. And it's tempting. Just go for a day.
And where can I get the best oils here, sir?
Yeah, legit. Got a couple of friends running around in Turkey too. Oh, yeah, but don't worry, I already know how to get there. It's fine. Go to Saudi, Kuwait, go to Abu Dhabi. I'm good, man. Honestly, I get in a car, drive an hour and 20 minutes. I'm in Abu Dhabi.
That's nuts.
Yeah.
As much as Australia's isolation.
I'm at like Ferrari World and shit. Like it's done.
Man. One day be nice. I'll start with America.
Sorry, just come at the end of the year.
Yeah.
I have to come back.
Sure, why not?
Actually, no, don't. That's the most expensive time. That's peak time. We don't want to do that.
We'll start with just one holiday midway through the year and we'll go from there.
Yeah, exactly.
It's technically a working holiday because it's 4 days of work and 6 days of exploring around stuff.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm doing the podcast. It's technically work.
yeah. I've got a podcast from America. That counts as work, right?
Yeah, 100%. It's work.
Is it my fault that I have to do it from out the front of the White House? No, that's not my fault.
Exactly right. Like, hey, it's work.
So why are you podcasting in the middle of the White House? Just don't worry about it. It's work. It's the work expense.
It's because I can.
It's business and pleasure.
Yeah, we like to mix both. We like to work hard and party even harder.
Role models are like it's party every day. No, I can party for part of every day. My Kendall too.
Exactly right.
Mate, we changed up the block. How exciting! First time in fucking 28 weeks.
Yeah, you're welcome. I like to just keep it spicy.
I tell you what though, so for listeners, we modified my training block. Literally the exact same layout, basically bar 4 exercise changes and some rep targets.
Yeah, change some sets and reps.
Some sets reps, yeah. So we literally just like grabbed volume. Like, I guess this is the enjoyment of, or the benefit of just training to grind into the ground, is that rather than being like, well, we've got to find more sets to add to you to get that stimulus, it's just, well, just keep taking what you're doing to failure. And we'll just take the volume from this spot and put it in this spot, and from this spot over to this spot. And it's the exact same volume of the program, but it's modified.
Yeah, exactly right. Overall volume for the program should be almost similar-ish in terms of sets and reps, but the actual lifting volume will be different, obviously, for a number of reasons, but exercises will be changing. So actual weights for exercises will be different. So, but yeah, I mean, it's literally just, I need to put volume where I need places to either grow or just to maintain, potentially grow in a bit more of a deficit, depending on how aggressive we go. But I mean, it'll be an interesting experiment because like I grew through my deficit, which isn't something that's normal. But again, I did run androgens much higher than usual for a deficit. So yes, it's just an interesting offset. So we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, it'll be fun. But yeah, adding some tempo work to the Smith incline, that was a fucking humbling experience. Hadn't done that one for a hot minute.
You're welcome.
It was like I think it was like a 3 second eccentric, 2 hold, 2 second concentric, 2 hold. And I was like, doing 50 kilo dumbbells for 3 sets of reps, I should probably be able to do pretty well. 80 kilos on there. And I'm like,
yeah. And again, for people listening, like the concentric 2 seconds is normal speed. So it's like 1 second. Yeah, the way I program personally, the way I've always done eccentrics, like 2 seconds isn't like a slow concentric like that, you know, Millis will try and say that you need to do to build tissue, which you obviously fucking don't. But 2 seconds is like normal speed, just fast. Whereas
just get it done.
3 seconds, for me, like for an eccentric, like a 3 second eccentric is a controlled eccentric. Like it's not a slow per se, it's controlled. Slow eccentrics.
Yeah, just putting more emphasis on the control part of the stretch.
Yeah, if I program 4 and 5 second eccentrics, which I do for some of my powerlifters every now and then, that's when it's slow. Like, you need to actually count the eccentric. Whereas like a 3 second eccentric, you don't necessarily need to count. I just need you to go slow, just nice controlled.
Yeah, and that was like the differential where, I've been applying intensity to like the dumbbells, but at the same time, I think in that position of setup with the Smith machine, it wasn't quite the same position, obviously, given that the bar path is obviously fixed. And so that was just a unique difference there. And then obviously controlling the 3 seconds on the way down, I was like, oh, that's new. That's a stretch.
Yeah.
That'll do it. So yeah, that'll be fun to see. What else we got there? We got a bent over row. Haven't done one of those in fucking ages.
We were talking about it, and I've been wanting to put him back in the program, so I was like, I'll send it. But we got Smith machine bent over row,
Yeah, Smith machine bent over row and a pendulum in there as well, I believe. And then just a jacked up fucking amount of hamstring curls.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Literally was that fucking crying pain the other day. It had not even anything different. It's literally just I think it's like an extra set each day, or maybe 2 sets. I can't remember what it is.
Yeah, I know I gave you a bit of extra. I think it might be 4 or 5 total extra sets in hamstrings across.
Yeah, and that was like
exercises.
That's a fucking piece of shit. I was like, cool, bro. Well, I think it was 1 top set and 2 back offs, or maybe 2 in a top set, and now it's like just 4 straight sets. And I was like,
that's exactly I think what I did.
yeah, that's gonna be fucking fun and suck a ton of dicks. But yeah, that's fucking it's fun. I'm excited. We're gonna go. What we got? Probably another week or so in this hold position. See how it goes. Down to about 104-ish. It's interesting actually because like coming up to what we're about to talk about, the hold phase here, like we pull down 200 grams of carbs. When I'm growing, I take out 200 grams of carbs, right? I miss a day's food like that. I literally pull like 1.5 kilos off. Like I wake up and I'm fucking light as shit. This week, it's been like supplementation is down, food is down, training intensity is still the same, but I'm only down to 104.5, like holding there. Whereas like that's 200 carbs per day off, which is what 800 calories, which is over the course of a week. 8 sevens are fucking, what is it, 56? 8 8 to 64? Yeah, 56. So that's a lot of calories to be down to only lose a fucking kilo and be like, oh, we're going to hold here.
Well, I guess like you said, the other kicker is we've pulled out androgens, right?
Yeah.
Which has an effect on the ability to grow tissue and then in turn metabolism. All that stuff. So it's intentional because I need to give the body.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah. Like it's good though, because it means like that level of response here, if I'm starting to hold at that, we don't have to pull much down in terms, it's a decent holding position to hit an aggressive cut from.
Well, exactly. That's exactly right. We're just like literally, as we would say, getting that runway already. We haven't pulled a runway reference.
Yeah, it is. I'm bringing it back. I'm making it cool again. Man, something for listeners to be excited for is we had our first American podcast this morning, actually. So that was an interesting one. Up at fucking 5 a.m. for a podcast with Yankees.
That would have been very interesting. I mean, I've done the same with England, having to get up stupidly early or stay awake stupidly late, like 1 a.m. for the podcast. It's like it's the only time I got. It's like, okay, sure.
Yeah. It was I think it was like 5:45 by the time I was on the call. And yeah, the dude, I don't know if they get it, but like when I was asking about times and stuff for the podcast, the host and the other co-owner and stuff of the company, that were just like, like what times or whatever suit you. And I'm like, I mean, I'll do like, I had a book for 5 a.m., but whatever time suits you guys. Like, oh, can you do like an hour later? I'm like, yeah, that makes it 6. He's like, you're going to get up to talk to us at 6. I was like, yeah, why not? I was like, I'm trying to branch into your market, so why wouldn't I get up and do that work?
Yeah, I mean, 6 isn't that bad. Let's be real.
No, I mean, to talk, like I had to pop some modafinil, have some caffeine, but whatever. It is what it is.
Yeah, that's the tricky part, because it's like if you do them at night, like really late, like 1 a.m., like you can't do that.
Yeah.
So it's like we're sitting there like, I'm trying not to fall asleep. It's like, do I sleep at like 9 and then get up at like midnight? But then it stuffs you around. Groggy. Well, then it just stuffs you around though, because then you're up at 1. Say you do an hour podcast or 2. Like, what do I do? Do I stay awake? Do I go to sleep? That's a real pain in the butt. Anyway.
But no, it was good because like the plan, like trying to get as much hype and excitement to be over there as possible. Like I don't want to land there and everyone be like, who the fuck is this guy? Like, what's he coming to teach us and what does he know? Like obviously I'll run through my resume of client results and that sort of thing, talk about it, but just having some actual anticipation of what it's going to be about and some hype around it, that sort of thing. So having a chance to actually talk with the guys hosting it and trying to get in contact with some more podcasts over there to sort of start building a bit of a beachhead internationally for Matter, which should be exciting. But that was a kind of the first step to that, which is cool. Just sort of like talked about business and how it started. That like basically the premise of the podcast was people's origin stories and stuff. And it's like, I lost one of my dads, so I'm halfway to being Batman. No big deal. Just dropping some dark dead dad humor.
just like, sorry, man, you gotta go.
6 a.m.
It's like when comedians do. It's like when comedians talk about like not being touched as kids and shit. It's like, Mum, you're really killing me in my artistry. Like you're killing my artistic side by not groping me as a child. Like I mean, if that's what you're into.
Yeah, pretty much. It's just like, look, I'm just laying out the foundations for you here. This is what built Batman, built fucking Spider-Man. I'm just telling you my origin story, dude. Only there's no Batcave or really good web shooting.
Well, there's web shooting, just no Batcave.
Oh fuck.
But nutrition is the topic today, I believe.
Yeah, I don't think we've done like a bit of a nutrition ramble for a hot minute, but between us, there's a few clients going into aggressive cuts and preps and tighten ups and whatnot. So yeah, I figure that's kind of going to be the bit of a talking point, I guess, is well at this phase for both of us, we've got clients now going through rapid tidy ups. So kind of made sense to expand to either them or anyone who's just generally listening about understanding ways to structure and plan out cuts just a little bit differently than your standard fucking 12, 16 weeks, slow down, run at a gradual rate of loss for however long for boring reasons instead of just being hungry and do it for 4 weeks.
Yeah, fair. I guess when we look at cutting, you can break down cutting, I guess, into a few different like subcategories. The main two styles of cutting, you call it, like your rapid fat loss, which I think you, myself, and probably a lot of the listeners are probably more fans of, we'll say, if you're anything like us, having shorter windows of aggressive cuts or hyper aggressive cutting versus your steady state longer period cut where it's like 10, 12, 16, even like 20 weeks, maybe even longer, depending on if you're a natty as well, to basically cut some weight. Now, it's funny because I think RP just literally posted a post on Instagram, but anyway, had a post on Instagram about mini cuts, and they summed it up pretty nicely in that, like, the two real reasons why you'd mini cut: wash off a bit of fat to set yourself up for a nice rebound phase for growth. Like, that's, I guess, that argument of super compensation and stuff like that. Or if you obviously have a desired look for a short period of time, people go on holidays, for example, and they're like, "Oh, I'm going to Europe. I want to look good for at least the start of the trip," and that's where you get all your photos. It's like, I mean, I get it. So do like a 4 to 6 week mini cut, go to Europe, get all your photos, and then eat all your food and get fat, and then you just post those first few photos. So makes sense. I mean, I get it.
Correct.
I get it. Yeah. Like, personally, I'm a fan of the hyper aggressive short period of time cuts. I don't like to prolong pain any more than I need to, personally. But obviously, if you're doing preps, and I think that's what we're really talking about, we may need to look at both options, and play around with what strategies we want to use based on the client that we have in front of us, but also based on what they also have coming up in their calendar, right? Because we know that, let's say an average prep these days is 20 weeks. It used to be a lot shorter. It used to be like 12, 14, 16 weeks. And that's where people would be a lot more aggressive for a longer period of time, because they'd feel that they needed to go aggressive for that entire span. And that's when they started to eat into muscle and, come in looking a lot more malnutritioned or malnourished, versus being able to eat into your show and actually have energy going into your show. Which is something that's being a bit more prevalent these days. We can see even from like a pro level further down into the amateurs, where you'd start potentially with a higher, more aggressive style cut when you feel good and you have the most weight to lose, whether it be body fat or whatever it is. The most weight being body fat to lose, you feel the best. You can get away with a hyper aggressive cut for that initial period. So however you structure that initial period is, again, based on you and your client. And then slow that rate of loss down. Well, you wouldn't slow the rate of loss down. You'd actually keep the rate probably similar. It's just that there's less weight to lose because you've already washed off that initial, 6 kgs or whatever it is that you've done in that initial hyper aggressive fat loss phase. But again, we look at the social calendar, right? Because then, as much as we want to always tell clients, hey, for the next 20 weeks, just fuck everything off because the next 20 weeks is going to suck and we're just going to...
I'm a monk, don't make it fucking hard on yourself.
Yeah, like, it's not realistic. And it's like, even like my client Nelly, for example, like, we had a work going away breakfast the other day, because she's one of my employees at my gym, and like, she came in and just had a coffee. She'd already eaten a breakfast, came in for coffee, and we were already eating breakfast, and she's just like, well, I've already eaten because I'm on prep. And it's like, yeah, fair. Like, you can still go to the social thing. And I know it's something that you like to do, where it's like, hey, I can't eat, but I can still sit here and talk and have a coffee or a Pepsi Max. So
Yeah, I think for me, people get weird. I think externally too, if you haven't set up that, or if you haven't exposed other people to that yet, you going to a food-based event where you're only consuming liquid is somehow weird. Like people find it so odd for us to go, say you go on a breakfast and okay, to me, this is just a coffee. If you want to eat, you can eat. Well, oh, I can't eat. If you want to eat, to me, it's weird as shit, but people get that way about it. But if you structure it properly, like you said, Nelly, great job. You can have your meal at home, go have your long black or your sugar-free energy drink, go on a walk or whatever it is, and still be in that social environment, which we know is probably going to alleviate, if you're a social person, accumulated stress. It's going to be psychological de-stressor. It's going to let that sort of wash off a bit. If you're an extroverted person, you're trying to introvert your entire prep, it's probably going to be hard because you're trying to monkify. You're trying to basically...
We'll make it a word.
We'll make it a word. It's a thing, trust me. You're basically trying to isolate yourself and lock yourself in a world where you don't actually enjoy that is going to lead to more accumulative stress psychologically than anything else. So
exactly,
if you can still make that fit, fantastic. Easy ways to do that, obviously, like like you just said, have your food before you go, have your meal measured, tracked, and weighed, and then just have a black coffee, or just go have a water, or have a Pepsi Max, whatever it is that you do. I've sat at every restaurant I can imagine that serves all kinds of foods and just had Pepsi Maxes, coffees, or water, and it's all been fine.
Yeah, exactly right.
But yeah, I think like the big fact, like I've got one of my lads is like, it was well ahead, but we kind of planned this out when we got dates ahead of time. Like he's had an Italy trip in prep because he just got hired by a gym equipment company to be an educated speaker on their rehabilitation side. So he went to Italy to learn from them, go to their head office, go to their facility. And then he's got, he had a 2-week holiday and a week holiday in there with previous relationships or whatever it was that happened. And now he's just kind of combined it into one because it's all paid for and couldn't refund it. Yeah. So Southeast Asia. I was like, look, you can diet there. You can definitely, I'm not copying the whole, you can't diet there. If you want to do this in prep, this is what we're doing. However, to accept the fact there's probably going to be a degree of variance amongst oils used, fat used, how consistent you would be with tracking and weighing food, let's get ahead of it by dragging out the aggressive response at the front end. And, we pulled down, I think it went from 100, held there for, we hit 100 for, we fluctuated 99 to 100, just give or take food volume for about 3 or 4 weeks. I was like, okay, we've held here pretty well. By this date, I want to pull down and just go to town. We dropped 7 kilos in the space of like 4 weeks, 6 weeks, something like that.
Yeah.
And like, it was aggressive as fuck. And he's like freaking out, like, dude, holy shit, I'm already at 92. I was like, yeah, but you're going to hold at 92 now. We only need to be under 90s, and we only need to be, I think for his classic cutoff, it's like 92 kilos, something like that. So I'm like,
yeah, exactly right.
We just now get to sit here, drop body fat, increase androgen load, and potentially feed back into the show once you're lean enough.
Exactly.
So that point then was obviously you're going to have a diet break overseas because it's just inevitable you're going to overeat. Well, not inevitable, but it's likely. So to equate for that, tracking that downward trend aggressively at the front end, we've got that rate of loss. It's well and truly occurred. Now we have 17 or 16 weeks, 16 and a half weeks to equate to 4 kilos of loss and space that out how we need to, and just aggressively be on the front end of his conditioning.
Yeah, exactly right.
Dude's got ab veins at fucking 16 weeks out. Like, bruh, what do you mean?
Yeah, and that's just it. You get ahead of the curve, and it's just like, well, now when you do go away, you have less stress to weigh out food, track food, and how, I guess, close to 100% accuracy are you? Well, it doesn't make too much of a difference as long as you're in the ballpark. Well, we're good. And like you said, dieting in Asia is not difficult by any sense. It's truly probably easy.
So we can implement all sorts of strategies overseas that offset those things. Like 2 out of your 4 meals a day don't have carbs. Make sure you got protein, have your fruit and vegetables, especially over in a country like that. Make sure you're hydrated from bottled water so you don't get sick, and eat fresh meats. Make sure they're lean cut. Avoid heavier fatty dishes like heavy oiled stir fries and shit like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Done. Hold that for 2 weeks, you'll be fine.
Yeah,
in 800% humidity and 20,000 steps a day, the likelihood of putting on fat very small.
Yeah, you're probably going to come back leaner and lighter.
Yeah, right as fuck. Probably end up with diarrhea.
Yeah, pretty much. Call it the Tabby effect.
Yeah. But yeah, I think it's because then from there, right, now you've got that front end approach. you now get back from that holiday, or you're in that middle period of prep where things aren't quite as exciting because that rapid rate of loss hasn't occurred. But that's where you get to kind of, you enter into a diet break, have a maintenance phase or a maintenance week, or maybe you have like a refeed, start trial and refeed protocols. Do you do like 6 to 7 grams per kilogram of carb? What do you want to do? Whatever that may be, over 2 to 3 day weekends. So you're slowing that rate down by reintroducing food and giving you more fuel for that mid-range to just gradually titrate back down from. The way I kind of look at it is just like an aggressive drop-off, sort of like a fill back up, then you just titrate down.
Yeah, and for me, when I look at it from an outside perspective, we want to retain as much muscle as possible, right? Both as a natural and an enhanced competitor, and to do so, we need performance. Now, if we were to go hyper aggressive for too long, we know the performance goes out the window. We know that we need carbohydrate intake in there at a sufficient amount to fuel performance, and keeping performance up as high as we can for as long as we can or as often as we can is going to keep muscle retention. Now, when we feel good and we have that fat to lose at the initial stage, when we go hyper aggressive, performance shouldn't probably waver too much because we do have a whole stack of back end biochemical processes going on, to help create and facilitate that glucose or glycogen for muscles to use and all that sort of stuff as well. So we're pretty good there. Like that's the whole sort of point of what's going on. But then as we start to drop that initial body fat, and where body fat, like the actual usage of body fat, becomes a little bit harder and a little bit more energy demanding. Well, okay, now we can start to feed the body carbohydrates again. It's not necessarily slow down the rate of loss, but we're slowing down the process of dropping, I guess, body fat versus body weight. And then from there, it's like, okay, well, we know that we're still dropping body fat, but also performance is staying up. And that in itself is also keeping like, metabolic capacity up and all that sort of stuff. So it's like this whole double negative where it's like we're able to keep performance up, slowly drip feed food in, but still lose body fat. Probably body weight too, because you're still in a deficit, but you're still able to fuel the sessions that you need to fuel to keep that muscle. Keeping that muscle, we know that does help in terms of like metabolic capacity and the ability to actually burn, whether it be, we'll call it energy, to drop body fat. So it's like, it works to our benefit, but it's like we need to be able to set it up in a fashion that we can do that. And this only really works, like it works well when the initial stage of prep before you even start, you're in a good position to. If you're too fat, this doesn't work. Like you just have to like prolong the process. But you have to be at a good percentage of body fat to start with as male or female, and then this sort of process works. And we see this being the popular or more popular way to do it, even at the pro level. So a lot of guys and girls are doing this at the elite level, where they're taking a very hyper aggressive initial phase and then slowly drip feeding more food in, still staying in your deficit, but because you've come from a hyper aggressive deficit where it might be 40,
it feels like a surplus
more, and then you start putting food in. You eat 3,000 calories, you drop that to 1,200 calories for 4 weeks. Go this hyper aggressive, go from 1,200 to 1,800 calories. You're like, holy shit, I feel so much better. You're still in a really big
30%
deficit.
increase in food.
You're still in like a 30% deficit. So it's like, you're still able to then wash off body fat and some body weight while keeping performance up and muscle retention.
They talked about that on the bro chat in regards to the difference for Valier with Matt Jensen over Patua, is that he noticed the aggression but increase in protein. So they obviously had their aggressive front end approach and pulled down food a bit harder, had more aggressive cardio states in terms of duration, but he also had a jacked up amount of protein. So he's obviously trying to drive glycogen depletion, trying to drive fat loss, whilst maintaining muscle tissue with androgen load and training intensity, because Ian trains hard.
And
and
we know that we can jack up protein. But we know we can jack up protein to 3 grams per kilo, 4 grams per kilo, and literally drive down carbohydrates, because we know that we do have this beautiful process of gluconeogenesis. So, where your body's actually going to convert protein into glycogen for muscle energy availability, call it, for muscle contraction and stuff like that, because it's one of the reasons why we can jack up protein so high. And drop carbs so low, because we have that ability to do that. And some coaches do like to do that. Like I've done it before. I haven't done it with a prep client. It's not something I'm a fan of. Purely from a feeling full point of view. But at the same time, when you're 120, 130 kilos and just muscle, it's probably a lot different to your average 80, 90 kilo, 80, 90,
having
kilo
480
guy, so.
grams of protein, fuck that.
Yeah, like it's a lot. That's a lot.
Yeah, that's a fucking shitload of protein.
Yeah, and obviously feel full and all that sort of stuff. You'd be satiated and all that sort of stuff. But at the same time, like, it wouldn't be without its downside. There's always a downside. Like you'd get so sick.
And then it does get to a point where it's like the logical choice there is to drive some of those calories to carbohydrates. Yeah, like you start pushing it, like you've got 3 grams per kilogram and you're 100 kgs. That's 300 grams of protein. That's a decent number of protein. You've got an extra 100 grams of carbs you can have there instead. I'd probably take that, even if it's just like carbs around training, so that I can make sure that you're retaining muscle tissue. I'd take that over the 400 protein.
Yeah, because I haven't listened to the podcast, but was there something mentioned about like muscle sparing and all that sort of stuff they were trying to talk about?
Yeah, I think amongst them, they were just kind of talking out their ass, but I think it got to a degree of talking about that somewhat. And I think they kind of just got lost in amongst what they were trying to say.
Yeah, I thought so. Yeah, so we know that muscle sparing really only occurs in a surplus, not necessarily a deficit. You can't really spare muscle in a deficit unless you have a decent amount of protein in there. And I guess that's where they're probably arguing the whole 400 grams of protein in a deficit to try and spare muscle. They probably didn't mention the 2 or 3 grams he was probably running those anabolics. Also muscle sparing. But anyway,
lipolytics. Yeah.
Well, yeah. No, I'm just talking about like the anabolics being muscle.
Oh yeah.
Probably didn't touch on that part, but anyway.
And the other thing too, I think is important to understand is like you can always have an ideal setup for a prep, right? Like you can always have like I want this to be 30 weeks, be perfect, blah blah. These things will happen. Now, then obviously, like we said, sort of calendars get in the way, right? So not even just holidays. One of my guys is going through just finished his masters. Like everyone who knows him will know who it is. Obviously, he's a very around the group client. Just finished his masters, but we're already from April this far into prep. Now, what I looked at across stacking that plan out and mapping those things out was a couple of peak loads in androgen, a bit of a hold phase, and then allowing him to solidify muscle and conditioning at the start of his exam block, because it was getting uncomfortable to push in food. It was like almost having to prioritize food consumption, but also wasn't dropping body fat. But I didn't want him starting fat because we'd shortened the range, because we're coming out of exam block and going ham into that aggressive phase. So instead of going, well, we're just going to have to bottom it out for 16 weeks, instead of trying to push growth right up until the start of prep, it was more so maximize as much as we can, work on everything around that, make sure life is set up so when things do take off, they take off. But we end up in a position now where we're 17 weeks out, 16 and a half weeks, whatever it is. He's probably obtained already in very little modification. I think I introduced 1 lipolytic at an average amount. He's achieved like a condition that he had about 6 to 8 weeks out of show from his last season with 17 weeks left to go. And I've still got him, I think I had him holding weight at 98 kilos on 4,000 calories. Yeah. His last prep, and this isn't a reflection of his last coach or anything like that. It's just more so we've managed to work up some things, obviously.
Yeah, exactly right. It's just management of.
Yeah, and just dealing with a better, like getting into a position where we can have calories at a certain amount to start off with. Yeah, his last prep was substantially less at the start, with obviously a higher body fat count, which made the whole aggressive prep more aggressive. Yeah. He's now holding weight at 4,000 calories to finish that process. To finish uni. So I want to make sure he was well fed, make sure he had energy to think and focus and study,
of course,
but have a decent body fat position. He might be 9% body fat at 98 kilos, 4,000 calories. So from there, we just go, all right, cool. It might have been a 30-week prep over the entire process, but we had our hold phase, our peak phase, and maintenance phase, and now we get to go, fuck you, exams done, drop out.
Yeah, and that's just it. It's just prolonging the phase, right? And it's like, that's why I say it's like the pre-prep phase is almost probably the most important phase versus the rest of it. Because if you don't get the pre-prep phase right to get actual prep started, if you're not in the right position, it just makes life way more difficult than it needs to be. And it's just like, well, then that's when you start running, obviously, the risks of adverse effects and what sort of stuff. So, like, what's the point? Exactly. That's why when sometimes you just go, hey, just push to the next season.
Yeah.
Like, it's not a big deal.
At 16 weeks out, to have that, I guess, flexibility and range now in that condition, I think we only have to achieve 300 grams a week rate of loss in terms of actual weight. And I think maybe it'd be sub 1% body fat per week, like easily in the space of 16 weeks. So we now have that capacity to run that aggressive phase for the 4 to 6 weeks, get so far ahead of that actual rate of loss, because we've only pulled down 1.5 kilos. We get to 92, and then it's just smooth sailing until under 90s. And then he has that room to fill up for the 92 cap as well. So 2 birds, 1 stone, fucking fantastic.
Exactly. Like simples.
But yeah, I mean, I guess outside of a prep realm, the main benefits I see to just a mini cut phase. Let's say you're having an extended off season. The relative notion should always be that if you're trying to improve, maximize, or whatever you want to call it, health phase, improvement phase, life phase, growth phase, off season, whatever the term, the premise is obviously you're trying to improve areas, weaknesses, fill in spots, improve the physique overall. So spending as little time cutting as possible, but also to maintain as good a condition as possible, just makes the most sense.
Yeah, exactly right. Well, you don't want to be cutting for like so many months of the year, right? Because it takes away from your growth phase or maintenance phase or whatever it is you're going to do. Like, you don't want to be dieting fucking half a year.
Yeah. If you're not a natty, especially if you're not a natty, spending all that time dieting to tighten up when you could probably do it in 6 to 8 weeks if you're that fat. But if you're tight enough and structure aggression enough and willing to take the certain compounds, that 6 weeks can be very responsive to then give you another 6 months of growing.
Yeah, and I always look at it. Clients, so like over it. I always have with clients, like new clients, especially when they're like, "Oh, I want to go through this cut phase. I want to go through like a growth phase, and I'm going to get jacked." And it's like, okay, well, we need to get you lean enough so that we can really maximize growth phases, not necessarily just one. And that's when it's like I'll always say, like, I feel like we're going to need one long, aggressive shit dieting phase. So whether we do hyper aggressive or just aggressive, it's going to have to be like a decent amount of time. And I'm talking 16, sometimes 20-week diets where it's like, hey, we need to manage this, but it's like a one and done, especially for like not a Gen Pop client, but obviously a client that just really enjoys going to the gym, is a bit more experienced and really wants to get the most that they can out of their physique without obviously being a competitor. It's like, hey, we'll probably need to do this style of dieting once, maybe twice if we want to do a photo shoot or something like that. But we need one at the start. We need to get you stupidly lean so that we can maximize the benefits of growth phases and multiple growth phases. Because if we do the one growth phase now, it may be really short because you're going to put on too much body fat, or your objective data is going to go to shit. We're going to have to cut you down anyway. And I don't want to do, 6 weeks cut, 8 weeks growth, 6 weeks cut, 8 weeks growth. We're not going to get anywhere. Let's go 16, 20 weeks cut. Let's do 16 growth. Let's go 4-week mini. Let's go 16-week growth. Like, which one sounds better? You know what I mean? So
I think it's a fear people have around being hungry, but like that 4 weeks is going to suck to a relative degree, but you shouldn't see that much drop in training performance. You shouldn't see that much loss of muscle tissue. You shouldn't get that much food focused behavior. And if you're relatively mentally strong, like psychologically sound enough, you should be able to push through it pretty well. Like, don't get me wrong, complain. I don't care if someone, like, if you complain about being hungry, provided you keep working. Like, I remember to you, I was like, when the fuck is my next refeed? But at the same time, give me less food. Like, I was flipping that shit in prep, where I'm just like, dude, like, I'm fucking starving and I'm falling off the bike here, passing out at 4 a.m. because I can't sleep. But at the same time, can I do less? Can I cut more food?
Can I cut more? Yeah. Can I come in better condition? It's like, bro, shut up.
Yeah. So you get to a point where it's like, you can do, I'm fine if you want to do both. If you want to complain and say, hey, can I go harder? Fantastic. Great.
Yeah.
But that 4 weeks, it really gives you like 4 to 6 weeks. It's just a really good time to recon. Like I had one of my young guys, he's a natty. We did 4 weeks. He had absolutely no, I don't say absolutely no. I was seeing the potential in his structure that was there before it was sort of coming through, because I could see what needed work, and I was like, okay, like if this pulls in, you can pull a vacuum, this tightens up, yada yada, great. 6 weeks, I think it was, we extended out to as an aggressive cut. And like at first, it was like, oh, I want to grow. And I'm like, hold on, hold the phone. Let's get through this because you don't have a base to work with yet. If we grow here, it's not going to work, like you're just saying. And that was back at the end of my season at November. And sorry, start of November. And he started up, and we've been running growth now, a growth phase for him. And it's June. And he's just about to finish his exams. And then we start a cut for him as well. So he's not prepping until season 2024. But like for a natty to have a 6-month growth factor because we were willing to do 4, 5, 6 weeks of just aggressive cutting.
Yeah, just cleaning it up.
Is a much better net positive for a natty to have to obtain an anabolic environment for growth.
Yeah,
versus, just gradually die for 6 months.
Yeah, it's all based on your goal. If your goal isn't to do that, well, then this conversation's moot. But for most of the listeners and most of the people that we come across, usually the goal is to get jacked. And it's like, if they want to get jacked, well, we need to do it the most efficient way possible.
Yes, correct. If you just want to get life lean and be able to walk around with shirt off and
which honestly, if that's your goal, it's not a problem. Like, man, that's easy. Like
that's a bread and butter shit.
Yeah, we'll take care of that in a month. Like that's fine. But if you're wanting to, be stronger, get more jacked, add tissue, like get lean, go to places you haven't been before, like you want to do photo shoots and stuff. Well, it's a bit different.
Yeah, I just thought it'd be a nice little, because there's a few questions here on body composition and cut phases and whatnot. So
I feel like we touched on
a lot of them. Yeah. So we'll try and get through question time.
Let's do a couple because my battery has 18%.
So for those wondering, I have to ask the questions because Scaff's phone has to shine on his face because his forehead's reflecting.
For those that are watching like on YouTube, if you do watch, I actually have my flash on because the office that I'm in has really good downlighting for photos. Like don't worry, after this I'm doing a photo shoot. But because the downlighting
is the same room on his gram for sure.
The downlighting is absolutely mental. But it's high ceilings and it makes me look like a villain, like that, has just like the voice of a villain in a movie where you don't actually see them.
You know what it reminds me of? On How I Met Your Mother where the captain and they're like, his face they're pulling out of the shadow. And he's like ready to kill someone. And then he's like, happy, that's you.
It's exactly right. There's just all the shadows like from my eyes and all that because of the downlight. But anyway.
All right, let's jump into some questions. How to set up a diet phase, deficit duration, rate of loss. We kind of just touched on that, the aggressive phasing. Generally, like my biggest piece of advice, rate of loss is just never, especially if you're natty, don't usually aim for above 1% of total body weight per week. You'll generally start to chew muscle.
Yeah, 100%.
How would you incorporate rehab injury considerations in a hypertrophy phase? Go.
I mean, it's in my spectrum. I'd still probably refer it just because I really don't bother dealing with it, especially if it's an online client. This is the tricky part. This is why I always say to people, online clients, we don't work with them in person. We can't see the little nitty gritty stuff. Have a support network, have someone you can refer to. I'm lucky that I've got guys, like I've got clients in New South and I've got a physio in New South, like the one that actually just asked the question. So it's like, hey, dude, go see him. If he wants to make any alterations and all that sort of stuff, by all means, I trust him, go for it. I've got the same setup in Queensland. I've got people there that I can send people to. I've got people in Melbourne. Hey, if these guys want to make alterations, the difference is in Melbourne, I can say, hey, come in, let's do a session. And I can probably fix the, incorrect technique or the little modification it needs to be made. That's the difference.
Yeah, agreed. I got a similar process. Like most of my guys, one of my clients, or several of my clients are physios. So if it's more massage work, I'll say go see them. If it's more physio work, like hey, go in person. And then generally it's like, all right, what changes do you need me to make to that program?
Yeah, and usually it's something so small. It's usually like a technique thing. It's like the bench, like dumbbell bench press, and the elbow needs to come in like a degree, and you're like, okay, there's no pain, there's no problems, and it's like, well, I can't see that because I'm not with you. So,
not sure if you answered this one, but could you go into PCT for women and layers of complexity? Continued from PCT for women, complexity being more versus less androgen use between individuals.
Yeah. So PCT use would be really dependent on the depth of usage. So androgens and what androgens have been used and all that sort of stuff. I know girls that have done like used androgens from a very minor point of view. Like we're talking things like, maybe like Anavar for 6 weeks, and it's like 5 milligram a day, we'll call it. So it's like, 35 milligram a week. Isn't crazy amounts. It's still more than enough than probably what they need. But it's not, I guess, in the grand context of things that much. Do they need PCT? Chances are probably not. Take out the androgen, everything should come. Hopefully there's no predisposed health issues. So this is all based on everyone being healthy. Probably be okay. Then I've seen girls that pin and, use testosterone and all that sort of stuff. Again, I've seen like menstrual cycle shut down and all that sort of stuff from using it. So it's like, again, that's where we need to look at potential PCT style of treatments and stuff like that. Like, what do we use? Man, whole stack of different things. We can use things from estrogen to, you can use clomiphene, you can use a whole stack of different things. It just depends on what was used initially and what the issue and symptoms are presenting. It's just too broad of a question to go through on a podcast.
Yeah.
I could run a whole podcast on the entire topic.
Next week.
Yeah.
Steps you'd take if fat loss stalls. Man, there's fucking 20, but easy ones. Making sure that all your KPIs are actually ticked off first. So before you go dropping food, are they hitting steps? Are they sleeping properly? Are they recovering? Are they training hard? Are they actually getting the food in? All that shit comes into play. And then it becomes like, what time are they having the last meal? Is it because calories aren't dropping, or is it because they're just eating too close to bed and they're waking up not doing shit?
The thing for me would be also the length of time that they've been dieting for.
Yeah, get into to that sort of like complexity of it then is, how long have you been dieting for?
Yeah, how long you've been dieting for? Because chances are you probably need a 3 or 4 day refeed or just a break, and then go back.
Yeah, diet break, or if it's that long.
Yeah, that's what we do. What we do in the growth. It's what we do in the growth phases. Just like, we've been literally in a surplus for like 10, 12 weeks, and I have no appetite. Cool. Take out the diet for the week. Just get your protein in, eat what you can, and then, oh look, my appetite is raging, and I actually ate close to my calorie target. Yeah, that'd be right.
What supplements outside of protein powder are actually useful, both gain and dieting? Fucking heaps.
Yeah,
having sold them for 5 years.
I was gonna say, you can take that one.
There is this weird notion where we get so many camps on the anti-everything wagon, like recommending a supplement makes you the worst person in the world, and you're not acknowledging whole food first. Like, shut the fuck up. Literally, supplementation's in the name. If there's research behind it, you can look at examine.com, ISSN position stands, you can look at a whole list of shit. Supplements work in conjunction with sufficient dieting. That's why they're supplements. You're supplementing what's not missing, what's not there. If you're looking in terms of performance, you start going towards things like caffeines, citrulline, beta-alanines. Like, there's different reasons as to why you'll introduce it at different milligrams. Caffeine is probably the most sufficiently studied in terms of actual performance. And then you've got like creatine for what creatine's trying to do with ATP replenishment. So looking at those logistically, like they're probably the most, efficiently, they're the most effective you probably introduce. Then you got stuff like things that I find beneficial, like 5-HTP. Then you get into other things like your hembeans if you have access to them. It used to be a lot more accessible in Australia, getting like your DMHAs and your stimulant benefits. Not quite as illegal, if you will, over here, but if you're international, they're usually really good for stimulant effects. And then you got a list of health stuff, like just absorbable vitamins that are water soluble or fat soluble. And then you've got, things like omegas and fatty acids, stuff that are supplementing dietary intake.
Yeah, for most people, honestly, you get a good multivitamin, you're pretty covered, provided your diet's pretty decent. Like you mentioned, creatine, always a good one. Like vitamin D, always a good one. And then whatever it is that you need based on your goal. So it's like,
because it's like for women, I find things like.
So when they say supplements, it's like, hold on, you can have a mass gainer. I'm trying to put on mass. I need to get calories in. Have a mass gainer. Like, cool.
Yeah.
It's like it's a supplement.
There's this weird anti-supplement push that I don't comprehend. It's like, yes, first and foremost, go for whole foods. Fantastic. You know what? At a certain point in time where probably not enough of that's getting in, or 100%. Especially if you're dieting, you're not consuming enough food to diversify your diet.
Or even throw in economic climate now. It's more and more expensive
Yeah.
to try and get some of this stuff. So it's probably cheaper to get some sort of supplement. So just get an EAA, for example, if you can't
Exactly.
afford to get like whole foods all the time. It's like, okay, well, shit,
100%.
you got to do what you got to do what you got to do.
Exactly. And so, yeah, I'm a massive advocate of supplements when they're necessary or when they're beneficial. Like just buying random shit because like, oh, this, and this.
Yeah,
don't
being
worry
like,
about it.
we're talking about the kid that walks into GNC or to nutrition.
Exactly.
Class. Yeah, different.
Different. But when it's beneficial, utilized, like, running through a fat loss phase, when my fat loss phase comes up, I'll 100% run 5-HTP. I'll run doses of caffeine. I'll run things like L-carnitine. Just little beneficial factors that will help that, they're not the be all end all, but when it comes to 1%ers and we're literally operating in the high echelon of efficiency, why do you not want to have those 1%ers on your side?
Exactly right.
What else we got here? Fat burning supplement strategies for naturals. I mean, fuck, that's a whole podcast in of itself.
Yeah, I mean, we literally just went over it. There's not much a natty can do in terms of like lipolysis and trying to speed up lipolysis from a supplement standpoint. Depending on your definition of natty.
Like, it's not androgen, so it's natty.
I mean, like L-carnitine, like injectable L-carnitine, don't take oral because it's shit house. Again, yes, you inject it. Can you get pinned for it? Not really. Depends like on your version of it. Like again, him being another one, like it can, because it does activate a certain pathway for lipolysis. It's not that great by itself because you want to use it with Clen, but hey, I mean, use Clen. No, I'm joking. Like there's all these other options, but really, like there's not much you can do from a fat loss standpoint. Caffeine, injectable or carnitine, if you want to go down that route.
Sex.
Him being, yeah, that's about it.
That's about it. What phases of training would you incorporate into a Gen Pop program? I mean, again, you're gonna have to look at the diversity of client, what they're trying to achieve.
Goal specific.
That's
simple.
Yeah, goal specific. It's a client spectrum right there as to what Gen Pop even refers to for us.
Yeah.
All right, what else we got? Got a few more. Who has played the biggest influence for you, both in terms of powerlifting and or bodybuilding?
I didn't really have, to be honest, I didn't have that huge of an influence from a powerlifting standpoint. Like I didn't sit there and be like, oh, I want to be that guy, if that makes sense. My first coach, Ben Mack, was a big one for me. He was just a good guy, good coach, cared. I wanted to be a better coach because he was a good coach, if that makes sense, in terms of powerlifting. And bodybuilding, man, there's no real body, like I love bodybuilding, but I'm not into like a bodybuilder per se, if that makes sense. I don't want to look like anyone. I don't look at someone and be like, yeah, fuck yeah. Like maybe JP in England, just the way he trains, obviously it's the way he trains. It's just, it speaks volumes to the way I want to train. But at the same time, it's like, for me, it's like my coach, like Joe Jeffrey, like his brain, like that's what I want. Like that's the things that I want. So I'm lucky, like Luke Miller in the States as well. Like the way he goes about his business on Instagram and being able to get his brain out there, like that's what I want. Like Cal Raystrick and the way he's built his empire, like that's what I want. I don't want to look like any one of these guys, because like Cal doesn't even train anymore. Sorry, Cal. And like Luke is still, like he's getting back into golf, so he's just copying me. And then Joe's Joe. So
yeah, that's fair. In terms of like any particular physique, I guess, that influenced me, you'll always look at like pumping iron was always a big one. Just in general, like looking at classic physique is always nice to me, which is why I did classic physique when I had the chance. It was always the goal, depending on the criteria, was always going to be like, I want to be able to pull those shots. And I know that I could pull those shots, but long-term I won't be able to, because they're just not going to be rewarded in the division I want to do. So did it while I could. Bought the fucking, the bodybuilding encyclopedia and all that sort of shit. So Arnie's obviously a big impactor there of like where I see my influence, if you will. But it's progressed over time with just types of training. Like I like Ian, I like Justin, I like their precision to training movement, but also their intensity. Then you start looking at guys like, I love the taper of Regan Grimes, but I want him to actually pull it together and fucking come in condition. I liked fucking what's his name, Jake Nicolopoulos here in Australia. had a great unreal physique when he was like prepping and getting ready. And then obviously the BC happened and he didn't get to go overseas. So, there's a list of different physiques that I like, but it'd be more so parts of them like, oh, that'd be nice to have. Like, but at the same time, it's always for me influence in their achievement, not so much their actual physique, because I know that my genetics will give me my physique in a bigger size.
Yeah.
If you had one opportunity, only ask CBum one question. Sorry, if you had the opportunity to ask CBum only one question, what would it be?
I have nothing to ask him, to be honest.
Yeah, like I'm not going to get.
Yeah,
I'm not getting anything educational or in that regard from him.
How's it going?
It'd be more so. It'd be more like a reflection question, like, I think you do differently, or like, something like that, where he's literally been at the top of the game, where you'd be like, it'd be nice to see if the top was worth it. Like, I think that's a big aspect where I think a lot of people put more emphasis on the top than what they actually think it will be. And so a lot of the time you get these people that are there and then it's like, yeah, I loved it. But the question is like, would you? So, I think that's a pretty decent question to ask on, hey, would you actually reflect on this, or
Yeah, I think I'd ask him like, what would you be doing if you weren't doing bodybuilding or something like that?
Yeah, something like that, like something away from, hey, tell me about your training program. Like,
what is it? Yeah, what is it outside of body? Like, who are you outside of bodybuilding?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, who's Chris Bumstead besides being CBum?
Yeah, like what? Yeah, it's probably what I do.
Blow his mind and ask a question non-training related.
Yeah.
Do you have instances where you failed as a coach? What did you learn from them? Yeah, 100%. Like,
yeah, of course, be here all day.
Like the majority of your coaching experience, and I would argue my first business collapsed. Like it collapsed is the wrong word. It failed in the sense that I chose a different route and went away from coaching directly, went into nutrition. And then I was like, I'm not satisfied in nutrition. I want to get back into coaching. So this time around, as much as you're all seeing like the matter success, if you will, if that's even the correct non-egotistical way to put it, it's a reflection of the fact that I failed previously. I didn't like what I was doing. The demographic I chose at the gym was wrong. The way I approached coaching was wrong. My soft skills weren't there. My actual higher education wasn't there. All the stuff now that I've corrected and redirected and upskilled.
Yeah, I made way more mistakes earlier on. That's probably why I make less mistakes now. Because obviously I've learned from them. So yeah, I mean, earlier on in the coaching career, it was always trial and error. And there's still a lot of times where it's trial and error, but now I'm a bit more smart with, I guess, the trial and error and being able to evaluate whether the percentage of error is going to be high or low.
Exactly. It becomes like educated error.
Exactly right.
Like we have, I guess you'd have more of like an allowance of like leeway, if you will, before it's like, oh, fuck, that didn't work.
Yeah, we'll like allow for a margin of error. It's like, okay, well,
yeah,
fucks up by 5%, sweet. Fucks up by 50, well, we're not going to do it.
Yeah. If they start gaining during a cut, oh, if that didn't go to plan.
We done fucked up somewhere.
Yeah.
I literally, I think the example is like literally Nelly and her training program for this prep, changed up her training program entirely for the prep. And I said to her at the start, I'm like, look, we're going to just trial it. I'm just saying, look, this is if this doesn't work, this is on me, not on you. Like this is, I just want to see how we go, at least for the initial 4 weeks, because I can always alter it and go back to a more traditional paradigm. But it's like a 5-day split, but it's almost got upper and lower in each workout, which is not something you do in a hyper aggressive state, like a deficit, because of recovery factor.
Like that.
But we have some things in place, and we have a lot of energy substrate still there. So it's like, okay, well, we can afford to take that risk. So let's see what happens.
Yeah. And like, it's a strategy you'll be able to take away and know whether it worked or not. Hey, is this something I'll try with someone else?
Exactly.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is like, because when we started, like we've talked about before, social media weren't anywhere near as big, and it was a lot more like forums, books, magazines that kind of provided education or information. So you have to get good at failing. That's probably like the best piece of advice around coaching people. And you'll realize too, majority of your general client, if you're in an actual corporate or box gym, the majority of your client isn't benefiting from a fucking periodized phase programming. They're benefiting from you just chatting to them, talking about their day, giving them 3 of the best hours of their fucking week, and just making them go home happy and feel exhausted. Getting that done, and then you might graduate into like online coaching and getting more like elite client or like athlete specific. But I think the biggest mistake I made was assuming that every client is going to be an elite athlete and directing my coaching in that manner, versus where I am now, where it's more so meet the client where they are and bring them up. And I think that's a big difference now.
Yeah, treat the client that's in front of you.
Exactly right. Like, yeah, ideally, I'd love fucking 50 Michaels from season 8. That'd be fantastic. But do I get 50 Michaels? Fuck no. I want to build 50 Michaels. Like, how can I take this person and flip them as much into that conscious, highly task-driven, goal-orientated individual? But is that their goal? Is that what they want? What do they want out of it?
Exactly.
What do they want to achieve?
Exactly.
Where are they in life? Like all those things. So yeah, I think getting good at failing early on and realizing your clients aren't you, and you're going to make mistakes, and you're going to, have to learn from how you programmed or what you thought was the right session. It's likely not. But at the same time, if they got a result and if they enjoyed it, they had fun, fucking sweet. And eventually you take that away to your online phase and go, well, now I want to coach a few more specific online clients. I think that's probably the biggest difference I found in being online, is that when you're stuck in a box gym, you're limited to that demographic and only that demographic. And you end up with like a lot less people than you want in your realm, if you will, especially if it's not like a high-end bodybuilding type environment. It used to be such exclusivity to work at a world gym when I started. That was like not where you went day one. Now it's like you get out of PT school, you go to any of these powerhouse world
gym.
Yeah. So now it's like, well, you've got online and you've got face-to-face. You can market yourself more specifically. Yeah, that's it.
Beautiful. Wraps up beautifully. So I've got 7%. That works out nicely. Well, let's leave it there, and we will get some interesting, I'm sure, questions for next week. We might tackle that PCT question in depth more next week. We'll see. Maybe we'll do a drug episode.
That's good to me.
Let's see. We'll see how we go.
Sounds like a treat. Write it down. Put on the mirror.
All right, guys and girls, thank you for tuning in. Hopefully you have a great weekend and stay safe. Peace.